introduce you to our panel. First, I want to say that we are unfortunate that Ellie Donovan cannot join us tonight. She became ill. She was supposed to be part of the panel, so I hope she's feeling better. I'm going to start. This is in alphabetical order, so you're going to have to raise your hand when I call out your name. So Linda Coombs is a Wampanoag historian, a museum teacher, and chair of the Wampanoag Advisory Committee to Plymouth 400. Linda, thank you for being with us. Dr. Donna Curtin. Dr. Curtin is the executive director of the Pilgrim Society and Pilgrim Hall Museum, the oldest continuously operating museum in the country. Lea Filson Lea Filson wears a few hats, but currently she is the executive director of Sea Plymouth, the tourism office here, and it is also a regional tourism office, so it covers all of Plymouth County, and one of the Mass Regional Tourism Councils, and she is also a past Governor General of the General Society of Mayflower Descendants. Lea? Dr. Gary Maestas is the superintendent of Plymouth Public Schools. We're mad at him right now. But at least he's staying until the end of 2020. I texted him right away and said, oh my God, thank you for staying. But he is going to be retiring and doing something amazing, I'm sure, because he is an amazing superintendent here for us. And then, thank you. And then Mr. John Mitchell, who is a co-chair of the Plymouth 400 Military Committee and also a member of the Ancient and Honorable Artillery and a new board member as of tonight, as is Lea. So, and now I'm going to tell you a little bit about our interviewer tonight, Christy Lee. Christy is an evening anchor at NBC 10 Boston and NECN. Her career began in Palm Springs, California, where she worked as a weekend anchor and reporter at an ABC affiliate. A year later, she moved to Spokane, Washington, this time at a CBS affiliate. So you've worked for all the networks, right? In 1997, she arrived in Boston to work at WHDH. For 4.5 years later, she took on the main anchor job at the CBS affiliate in Seattle, Washington. But she couldn't stay away from Beantown, so she's back. She returned, actually, to Boston in 2005 and is now an anchor for the triopoly, NBC 10, Telemundo, and NECN. Christy immigrated to America at age 7. She was born in Taeg, South Korea. Her parents named her Yoon Kyung Kim. Did I just massacre?
Now you know why I changed my name.
But when she became a U.S. citizen, she got to name herself. She has an undergraduate and graduate degree in journalism from Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. She lives in the suburbs with her husband, who is from Boston, and their 2 daughters. So please join me in welcoming Christy Lee.
Thank you. I feel like I have to stand, so I'm going to stand, sorry. NBC 10 Boston, NECN, and Telemundo, it's just so excited and proud to be a part of this whole organization and Plymouth 400 and the commemoration and just being the lead media sponsor as well. We've actually been working for a few years now, putting together programs, stories, vignettes. Some of them have already aired. They're currently airing or will do so when 2020 finally gets here. And it's on television. We have social media as well as our websites. The stories will be on there. But it goes beyond that because of NBC Universal in New York and their commitment to this as well. We'll be able to take all the content that we create in the local organizations and schools. We'll be able to use it as an educational tool. And so we're really proud of that aspect as well. And more on the personal side of things, nothing in life is 100% certain, but there is one thing, and that is that I am not a descendant of a Mayflower passenger, right? You never know, so it says Lee, but I took the 23andMe. Yeah, I'm 100% certain of it. But the one thing that is in common, as Michele mentioned, is that as the Pilgrims were, and as I and my family are, we are all immigrants. And sort of that shared experience of coming to a new country for a better life. My parents were very poor in South Korea. Daegu is the town. And so we were able to come to America, and me and my siblings and I were able to get education in the careers that we enjoyed. So my family owes so much to America, and just so proud to be Americans, and another reason why I'm proud to be a part of tonight. So I thank you for the invitation as well. All right, so now the talk show portion begins. I'll be more Oprah than Maury Povich, so don't worry. All right. So first, let's start with Donna Curtin, who is the executive director of the Pilgrim Hall Museum. And so you know a lot about what happened here 400 years ago and before that as well. And so tell us about the message that the museum wants to get out, because there are so many goals and messages around this year of commemoration.
Well, our organization, Christy, is 200 years old next year. And we have been telling the Pilgrim story since the founding of our society back in 1820. And that story has really focused on the founding of Plymouth Colony, the experiences of the English families that came here, like your own immigrant experience, to create better lives for themselves and for other motivations that they had, but also to tell the story of their encounter here in the New World, including the relationships and the challenges that they faced in a new place with people who had lived here for many thousands of years. So we take a broad approach. We feel that this 400th anniversary is really an opportunity for a new kind of conversation in American society and culture, not just within Plymouth, not just within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but really across the nation, to understand the roots of our nation and some of the complexity to it. And that's a challenge, I think, that our institution is undertaking. But going back to a theme earlier, we really want to find ways to engage people that is welcoming and accessible to them. So our institution had to put our thinking cap on and think about what is a way for Pilgrim Hall Museum to tell the story of the founding of Plymouth in a way that we haven't done before. So not through exhibitions with text panels, not through monumental artworks from the 19th century showing scenes, not through even modern digital presentations. But the idea we came up with was an old one and yet a new one, and that was to tell this narrative through embroidery.
Okay, when she says that also, I mean, this is a huge project in size as well.
We are planning and currently creating a tapestry that was inspired by the idea of the Baia tapestry. There are 20 panels. Each panel is 6 feet long.
Yes.
Each panel tells an episode of this history. It is created with the input from historians, including one of our panel members here, Linda Coombs, is on the advisory committee for this project. So we have both English and Wampanoag perspectives being brought in on the historical end, and a fantastic local artist who is in her 80s. Her name is Elizabeth Creedon, and she is a needlework artistry beyond compare, and also she's drawing original artwork for each one of these panels. And there's a little crew of dedicated volunteers who are stitching away in Plymouth every day, creating this artwork. We have so far, we have 2 6-foot panels fully completed. I think 3 more are nearing completion, and our goal is by the end, I'm sorry to say not of 2020, but of 2021. It's going to take us a little while to create this artwork that we hope will last for 1,000 years.
So after 2021, though, we could enjoy it forever. So that's going to be great.
And you'll be able to
amazing.
see a lot of it next year in 2020.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Donna Curtin. And now I'd like to introduce Lieutenant John Mitchell of the Ancient and Honorable Artillery Company of Massachusetts, and tell us about your organization's involvement.
Sure. Thank you for having me, first of all. I got involved with this actually almost 10 years ago. The past commanding officer of the Ancient and Honorable Artillery Company, who has some roots in this area, brought us to Burial Hill. He told us a story. He's actually in the audience today, Dan May, and he told us a story of 2 cannons that were dedicated there in the 300th celebration, which was 1921. Long story, but those cannons are no longer there. One is under the great care of Donna Curtin at the Pilgrim Hall Museum. The other went back to Guernsey Castle. It's called the Guernsey Falcon is the name of that cannon. And that Guernsey Falcon ended up being one of a kind in the world. And so it is truly a prized possession. And although we no longer have that here, the idea that Captain May, and under the leadership of our current commanding officer, Nicholas Chirizzi, who took on the responsibility and said, yes, we'd like to see this through, we're going to dedicate a cannon for the commemoration of the 400th. That's how we got involved. And when we first got involved, we were thinking, of course, we would be organizational partners. The leadership within Plymouth 400 is extraordinary, and the collaboration and the friendships that we made immediately made us realize that we had to be a bigger part of this. And so I've spent much of the last 2 years collaborating with anybody that was willing to allow us to. And so, as Michele mentioned earlier, I've become a board member of the Plymouth 400 Inc., as well as co-chair of the military committee, with the ambition and the goal of to try to bring some of the pageantry of our military, not necessarily specific military units or pieces, but maybe units that are commemorative in nature. So they're there to celebrate different things. That's their role. So we have a number of different organizations, the Old Guard with their fife and drum, their colonial infantry, their Continental Color Guard. We have the 101st Field Artillery that does the 1812 Overture, the howitzers at the Boston Pops. We have 215th Army Band. We have the Coast Guard Band, the Navy Band. We have hopefully UMass Amherst Band will be coming. We have a number of military groups that are here, as well as specifically partners of ours, of the Ancient Honorable Artillery Company of Massachusetts. The organization that started the Ancient Honorable Artillery Company was the Honorable Artillery Company of London. And so they were chartered some 100 years before us. We were chartered in 1638, and they were the founding members of our organization. They will be here with 220 members and guests. They were also integral parts of the original dedication. They actually are the ones that got the 2 cannons for us, and they will be here in great numbers on the 400th commemoration.
So I think you've been pretty successful in figuring out a way to be involved. Sounds great.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, John Mitchell. All right, so now we're going to speak with Linda Coombs, who's the Wampanoag historian and chair of the Wampanoag Advisory Committee for Plymouth 400. Tell us why it's so important for the Wampanoag to be involved in this commemoration and for all the history that the Wampanoag can bring to this commemoration.
It's important because the Pilgrims pulled up not into a vacuum or into empty space, but into Wampanoag territory. Okay, and we have been here since the Creator put us here, which is a tad bit longer than 400 years. Okay, we lived here before, when it was all solid land, before the Cape and the Islands were formed, and we're still here. We're a tribe that lives in our ancestral homeland. We've never been moved or left or anything. We're still here. And a lot of the history of what has happened between the Pilgrims and the subsequent European people and our tribe, or the tribal nations of southern New England, has been mythologized. And people, you know, to the point where people in the next town to where we live don't even know that we still exist.
Yeah.
So and there's a huge amount of history that's happened here. And it's not a pretty history, but it is American history, and it needs to be told.
And being part of this Plymouth 400 vehicle for telling that, you have 3 different main events for 2020, one of them being the Native History Conference at Bridgewater State University, and that's focusing on the experience of the Wampanoag. It's broken up into 3 different sections. Tell us about it.
Well, the speakers are coming from tribes throughout New England, and plus people from other tribes, depending on what it is they'll be talking about. But the first section of the conference is going to deal on our creation histories. And you notice I don't say creation myths or legends, but our histories, okay? and also on what our traditional life was and why we lived like that. Because everyone assumes that we lived in houses covered in bark because we didn't know a better way to build houses until the Pilgrims got here. And we used to get that question all the time when, there's a number of alumni, I believe, in the room for Plymouth Plantation, former employees. Hey. And so we're trying to establish that the way of life that we had, our traditional way of life, was successful, it was viable, it worked. And, it still amazes me that, people they're so busy thinking, oh, well, they were primitive people, and they missed the fact that the earth was intact in 1620. Okay, because of the way that we lived. It wasn't happenstance, which is what people often assume. So our life was a purposeful construct. We were aware of what we were doing and why we lived like that, and it was purposefully directed. The second section of the conference is going to deal with colonization, so that'll be a very tough section because there is a lot of tough history.
Yep.
But I believe that if something happened, it needs to be told, and it needs to be told in its rightful context. Okay? And then the third section of the conference is going to feature things that people are doing today to just carry on, as Wampanoag or Native people, Nipmuc or Passamaquoddy or whatever. For example, we're hoping to bring in the Wampanoag Language Reclamation Project, which has brought back the Wampanoag language from not having been spoken fluently anyway for several generations.
Wow. All right. And then you also have the exhibit called Our History. Is that a traveling exhibit?
Yes, Our Story.
Our Story,
400 years of Wampanoag history. The primary creator of that is Paula Peters, who's in the room with us tonight. And the exhibit does, it's in sections. It's started out with a section called Captured 1614, which dealt with some of the history that happened before the Pilgrims landed. And it grows by a section each year. 2019 is on Squanto, the return of Squanto, because he was kidnapped, brought to England, enslaved, and then eventually, after 5 years, made his way back.
Okay, and then the third element is the Ancestors Walk, right?
That's a separate event.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and we're trying to, we're still in the planning stages with that, and to determine, who would be involved and and how we'll involve them, or what other speakers and what have you we might have with that event.
Okay, great. Linda Coombs, thank you so much. And now we'll speak with Dr. Gary Maestas, superintendent of Plymouth Public Schools. And Linda, you were talking about telling the full story, history and not myths, and that's sort of the challenge for you as well in the history classes in the schools and what our students are learning. And a big help for doing that would be the Massachusetts Chronicles. So tell us about that.
So, one of the things that we really tried to do many years ago when we started planning for the 400th was how do we curricularly try to explain what the 400th is all about. So our idea going way back was a curriculum. How do we get it into the classroom? Very difficult because it's such a big topic. So how do we bring this thing to life? So one of the things that we did is about 2 years ago we partnered with What on Earth Books. They're out of England, and kind of ironic how this all came together. But what they are doing is cooperating with us here in Plymouth on creating the Massachusetts Chronicles, which will chronicle pre-1620 to current day, which is a book that will really tell about the life and time of pre-1620 and what life was like before 1620, all the way to current day through a timeline aspect. So you can, what's really amazing to us is we got a legislative earmark to actually get this book produced, and in every single school in Massachusetts. So every school in Massachusetts will get the Chronicles, and we'll also have a teacher's curriculum guide that will actually help teachers to dissect where it can fit into the curriculum according to the Massachusetts frameworks. So every school will get this document, with this Chronicles document, which will really tell stories through a timeline. So we'll have this book, and inside the book actually opens up into about a 20-foot timeline of historical benchmarks of what happened through history. And the whole idea is to inspire children to fill the gaps, because we'll have these benchmarks, but how do we inspire them to break apart what happened through time? And that's where the teacher's magic comes in, where we can actually ask teachers to take a look at what happened between 1620 and 1630. We might have some key benchmarks, but what happened in between those benchmarks? So our whole goal is to inspire learning, but most importantly, how can we engage the entire Commonwealth on something educational that really ties in with the 400th? So we found that our key way was going to be the Massachusetts Chronicles. So we're very fortunate to have partners that have come together. Bridgewater State is going to be our educational partner, where they do professional development. So we're going to do an online training for educators around the Commonwealth, where they'll get the documents, but they can actually learn how to integrate certain pieces of the documentation into their curriculum. We have UMass Amherst that we're doing some work with. We have Curry College. How do we bring all of these entities together to really bring this educational moment of the 400th into the classroom and into the lives of children? So that's our main purpose, and we're very grateful of the partners that have come together to make this a reality for us.
And I think a great part of every school getting a copy of this book is that it'll be a uniform education. Everybody will be
Absolutely.
getting the same history, the same
Absolutely.
lesson, right?
And and to Linda's point, how do we capitalize on important, accurate facts of history, which is really important for our teachers to be able to share and kids to understand, and them to have resources in front of them. The really neat part of this is we're still doing some fundraising to try to do more and more, so we can give school districts 2, 3, 4, 5 copies opposed to 1. This book will be available on Amazon, bookstores around communities in Massachusetts. So I think it's also another thing for other communities in Massachusetts, as they begin to tell their 400th story shortly after the Plymouth, that they can do something similar.
All right, Dr. Gary Maestas, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And speaking of capitalizing, we're going to turn to Lea Filson, who is the Executive Director of Sea Plymouth, a tourism office, and one of the Massachusetts Regional Tourism Council members. And, with Plymouth 400, it is an opportunity to capitalize on this sort of the tourism that will come from this huge event and bring a boost to the economy here in Plymouth.
And it will bring a boost to the economy, and this is the perfect time to do it, because we know that right now that visitors are looking more than anything else for authentic places where everything that they see is authentic, as well as for experiences. And what better place in the United States of America can you go than Plymouth for both things? So we do expect a couple million more people than we normally get, and we expect to be able to educate them in a proper way, in the truthful way, as well as show them a really good time.
Excellent. But also, how are you promoting the events? Because promotion is a huge part of just how successful that will be.
Promotion is a very important thing, and with Plymouth 400, I sit on the marketing committee where we're doing messaging, where we have representatives we have descendants of both the Pilgrims as well as the Wampanoag tribe. We also have other very experienced and very accomplished marketers that are helping us to put all of those messages together to tell the correct story. And so we'll market it as you do in normal times. I mean, you go to trade shows, you talk to tour operators, you do lots of advertising with various things. We'll be doing a lot of print media, but a whole lot more social media and internet advertising, as well as some television. So in the normal ways that you promote, but we have such an incredibly interesting story to tell. and one that touches the hearts of every American and many people internationally, because there are over 35 million people around the world who descend from the Pilgrims. And so much of the story was in the UK, as well as in Leiden, and as well as in America. So we have a lot to say and a very important place in this wonderful country.
Absolutely. And speaking of the descendants, you're one of them. And so you know a lot about Pilgrim history and also anything to do with it. So we haven't touched on the Mayflower too. So if you can tell us about sort of the restoration and renovation work that was undertaken and completed now.
Well, the Mayflower 2 does not belong to the Mayflower Society. It belongs to Plymouth Plantation, but I can certainly tell you about it. It has been in dry dock for quite a while now at Mystic Seaport. It has now come out of dry dock, and it's in the middle of sea tests right now. And in the middle of May, it will venture first to Boston, where there will be about a 5-day festival going on, and they're going to sail into the harbor right next to the USS Constitution. And there will be family fun and lots and lots of festival activities, etc. From there, once that 5 days is up, they then sail back home where they belong. And we cannot wait to get the Mayflower 2 back. They'll be here. They'll participate in a maritime festival that will be happening this summer in September. The Mayflower 2 will sail again to Provincetown, and in Provincetown there will be a reenactment of the signing of the compact where they think it may have been, right in Provincetown Harbor, and descendants will come from Boston, Plymouth, as well as Provincetown land will sail out to that spot, and a wreath will be dropped as a commemoration and as a memorial to the Mayflower ancestors. Yeah. And then they'll come back once again, and then we start 2020 and beyond. 2021 is the 400th anniversary of the first Thanksgiving. We know that that's also going to be a big event for us.
All right, so but that homecoming is going to be something, right? And probably drawing a huge number of tourists to Plymouth for sure.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you to the board members and for sharing all the information that you've done so tonight, and for all the hard work, really, that you're putting in and continue to put in, I'm sure, as we get closer to 2020. And time is flying by. It's Halloween, and the holidays are over, and finally 2020 is here. And it's not just Massachusetts, but the whole country and the whole world who will actually finally be able to experience, to see, and most importantly, learn from all that you all have done here. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for just imparting your knowledge and your enthusiasm for this commemoration. We have lots of different perspectives, lots of different parts of history to tell. And with the people on this stage and the people out here in the audience and all of our volunteers and boards and commissions, we are going to have a wonderful year next year. And we are going to be able to look back on this, or we hope in 500 years, they look back on this and say, hey, they did some pretty neat things for the time. Because we say that about the 300th. So if you want to know more about Plymouth 400, we have a really robust website, thanks to Mary Shields, who is the clerk of our board of directors. Mary? Thanks to Mary's design firm. If you go to Plymouth 400 Inc., as in incorporated.org, you will find a really robust site where the calendar of events not only has our 7 signature events, but over 100 other events, partner events, that will be going on throughout 2020. So when visitors come here, or when anybody wants to do something that has to do with the 400th, they can look on the calendar and find it and go there. And so we really encourage you to go ahead and scour the website and ask us questions and tell us what's wrong with it. If you find something that you can't find Mary saying, no, don't tell us what's wrong with it. But we really appreciate all of you taking your time out tonight to come to this annual meeting and to learn about what's happening and to be a part of what's happening, because in our lifetime, this is the only time that we are going to have an opportunity to say what we need to say and do what we need to do regarding the history of 1620, before it, beyond it. So we really hope that you'll come and you'll enjoy some of the festivities and the events that happen here, and take advantage of those legacy projects as well. And so without further ado, I'm going to dismiss our panel and say goodnight to you. Please feel free to stay and chat with each other. We're going to get some photographs. I think you might want these guys to stand up and do a photo. Other than that, thank you so much for coming, and also don't forget to leave the centerpieces.